Genesis chapter 2, I'm reading verse 18 alone. Genesis 2:18. When you're there, say amen. Amen. And the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an helpmeet for him." It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an helpmeet for him. As a title, I want to use these words: alone in a crowd. Alone in a crowd. When I finished all of my schooling, my very first job, some of you have heard this story, but my very first job was as a staff financial analyst with Eli Lilly and Company. It was my first professional job, my first real experience as a professional in a corporate setting. I didn't know much about such things. And I was nervous. I was nervous on my first day. I didn't know what to expect of them, and I didn't know what they might expect of me. And this is a big company. And when I went into my area and we went through and they signed me with someone who would show me what my job was, and there was a little bit of peace because I knew somebody then. And when lunchtime came, he invited, we were all going to lunch. You want to come with us, right? And I said, well, sure. So I followed them to the cafeteria. And they were familiar with everything that was in place. I was not. So it took me a little bit longer than them. And when I finally had gotten my plate and went to the area where everyone was at, they were all sitting at a table. And there was no more room at the table. And so I remember looking at them, and I remember a couple of them looked at me and they did this. And so that day, new, afraid, unassured, I sat at a table in a cafeteria filled with people, but I sat at a table all by myself. I was embarrassed. I felt like an outsider. I did not feel like I was a part of the team. I didn't feel like any of those people sitting at the table cared anything about me. And I didn't feel like they were even kind people. Because wouldn't you have thought that at least one person would have got up from that table and would have seen that the new guy was sitting at a table all by himself, that they would have cared enough to come over and sit beside him to make him feel welcome. At least one person. So now, every time I see that we have a guest that is unapproached during fellowship, if I ever see a situation when we have a guest who has to sit alone, I cringe. I cringe because I've been there. Every time I see a new member that comes into our church and they just sit alone in a crowd and then leave, I cringe. I cringe because what it means is that as a pastor, I have not been effective in creating an environment where people care enough about their guests and their new members to make them feel welcome. I take responsibility. It means that we don't have an effective assimilation process. An assimilation process, what does that mean? Let me explain it this way. If I have a can of white paint, and then there is a single drop of red paint on top of all of the white paint, the red paint stands out pretty much, right? It stands out. It does not fit in. It has not become a part of what's happening in the bucket. But then if I begin to stir the paint together, there will come a point in time when you can't tell the red paint from the rest of the paint. And what it does is it forms a brand new color because of the influence that came from the new red paint. And every time you would mix a new color in, the paint becomes a new color all over again. What does that have to do with the church? Whenever we have a visitor or a new member to come into our church body, they will very naturally feel like a drop of red paint. But if we do things, as a church body, if we do things to pull them in, to assimilate them, to mix them in with what's happening, then they can feel included. They can feel like they belong. They can feel like nobody really can tell them different than any of the rest of the people. They feel like they're one of the members sitting at the table. But also the church benefits because the church will be different. The church will be newer. Every time we have a new member, y'all, we become newer. We become different. We become better. Until we mix them in, we don't know what they bring to the table. Who in us know? We couldn't have known that Aisha could sing the way that she can. Amen. Until we mixed her in, included her in to what it is that we did. We didn't know that Sister Stephanie loved people so much till we gave her a chance to be moved in and mixed in and to share her testimony. And y'all, as a result of them and others, we are a better church today. So if you want to be a great church member, then you need to help us become a church of assimilated church members. Assimilated church members who are invited to sit at the table. But I need to tell you that it is a two-way street. Part of the responsibility is on the church to be welcoming. But the other part is a responsibility on the part of you as an individual to be open and available and not standoffish. I knew that would be a quiet moment. Because being standoffish allows you to be alone in the crowd. And the text says that God says it's not good for you to be alone. And as a pastor, I'm not going to let you get comfortable in doing something that's not good for you. Because we all have a part. The church has a part. We talking about the people who are at the church. Because y'all, once we have been here for a little while, we all are like people sitting at the table. We know one another. We talk with one another. We laugh with one another. We joke with one another. And this is the way that people act. This is the way that they enact when we're all sitting at the table. The difference, however, in what we do and what I experience across down the street is this, that at this table, there's always room for one more. There's always room for one more. When the sermon's over, Jamil, we put out 89 chairs. I caught that part. We put out so many chairs. You know why? Because there's still room. There's still room. There's still room at the table. The Bible tells us to compel them to come. How do you compel someone to come to Jesus? As a church, we have to make Christianity, we have to make serving the Lord so attractive that people are drawn to it like a moth is drawn to a flame. And how do we do that? Simply by showing love. Simply by showing love. Because if we show them love, we show them God, because God is love. If you want to be a great church member, we need you to help us become a church of assimilated church members. Help us mix it up. Help them bring them in. Help them draw them in to feel welcome at this place. But it is a two-way street. We are responsible for making an environment where they feel welcome. But there is another part. We're talking about the people who were like me, who were sitting at the table all alone. Sitting at the table, him or herself, surrounded by a crowd of people, but still very alone. But let me be real about this. You all ready for a good sob story? But y'all, some folks just want to be left alone. Some people are interested in getting to know you. Some people aren't interested in developing a relationship with you. In fact, if you get too close to them, they might growl. The relationship between church members can be closer. It can be a closer relationship than some people have with their own family. But some folks, when they come to church, have this lyric running around in their head. As long as I got King Jesus, I don't need nobody else. The song has catchy lyrics, but it goes against the biblical principle. Adam had the constant companionship of God himself. And God looked at him and said, it's not good for you to be alone. So God created companionship for him. God created someone who he could have a relationship with. Someone who was like him. So he didn't have to be alone. I remember one of my grade school teachers saying this: if you want to have a friend, then show yourself to be a friend. Because this thing is a two-way street. And I tell you, it's difficult. It's difficult to teach this concept of inclusion in this era of human history and of church history. It's hard in this era of human history and in particular church history, because we are living in the era of less. If there's anything that's going to make us have to put forth more effort, then we won't do it. Sister Burnell made an announcement today about y'all coming out for the women's choir. You're going to have to do something extra. Y'all ain't going to say it out loud, but there's a decision going on in your head. And I got to do this, that, and the other. I'm going to have to drive all the way to the other side of town. They ain't going to start on time and they going to finish late. Whatever is going on in your head. Because we live in an era of less. People won't get up a little earlier to come to Sunday school. People will not give up Wednesday evening or Friday evening or Wednesday at 11 o'clock to come to Bible study. Why? Because it's going to make them have to put forth a little more effort. We live in an era of less. Church ain't convenient enough for us. Hell is convenient. It's easy to get there. We don't come back for afternoon services. Fewer and fewer churches have afternoon services anymore because folks don't show up. In fact, we have our programs and we have consolidated our programs that were in the afternoon into morning time. Why? So that we don't have to come back. Why? Because we live in the era of less. It's hard to teach inclusion, to tell someone to be included when the church is on a path that leads to less. because it's convenient. But if you want to be a great church member, the church is going to have to do its part, and you're going to have to meet us halfway. You got to at least make yourself available. Yeah, and y'all, most of us don't bite. And if you meet up with the right one, they'll tell you the ones to do. Oh, amen, amen, amen. We just saying you got to help us out. Help us to help you. So at South Calvary, you don't have to be alone in a crowd. You have my assurance that as long as I'm the pastor here, we're going to work. We are going to work to ensure that we are a church with a welcoming heart. We want you to be able to feel like there's always room for you at the table, and we want you to feel invited to become one of us. But we hope that you will accept our invitation. We hope that you will take the time to learn our names as we take the time to learn yours. We hope that you'll take the time to become a part of our family. Become one of our friends. Learn how to love us as we are learning how to love you. And if we become an assimilated church, a church that's mixed up real good, if we become an assimilated church, we will become the kind of church that God intended for us to be. A church of love, a church of compassion, and yes, a church of action. Yes. A place where God knows he can go to get some things done. Because things are going to be different now. Our church was saddened to learn of the death of one of our most valued members. Someone else. Someone's passing creates a vacancy that will be difficult to fill. Else, as he had been known, has been with us for many years. And for every one of those years, someone did far more than a normal person's share of work. Whenever there was a job to do, a class to teach, a meeting to attend, one person was on everybody's list. Let someone else do it. Whenever leadership was mentioned, this wonderful person was looked to for inspiration as well as results. Someone else can work with that group. It was common knowledge that someone else was among the most liberal givers in our church. Whenever there was a financial need, everyone just assumed someone else would make up the difference. Someone else was a wonderful person, sometimes appearing superhuman. Were the truth known, everybody expected too much of someone else. Now, someone else is gone. We wonder what we're going to do. Someone else left a wonderful example to follow. But who's going to follow it? Nobody. Who? I'm trying to be somber. Who's going to do the things someone else did? When you're asked to help this year, remember, we can't depend on someone else anymore. God bless you, church.